Welcome to the Permission Mission Show. My name is Mary McElhatton. I am your host today. We are broadcasting live here in the studio in Las Vegas, Nevada at the WWDBTV. Also, you can catch us on the Facebook Live WWDBTV, Permission Mission, and also Mary McElhatton. Today's show is going to be addressing why is it so difficult to admit to mistakes? I am always wanting to figure out ways to talk about normalizing the conversation of mortality. And this is simply just another way to tie it together. It's a conversation that we don't like admitting to, which is the same that we don't like admitting to one day that we will leave this earth. And are we prepared? And are we living our best life is really the question I ask you today. So I want to start off with a question. How many times do you think, or how many ways can a shoelace be tied on a tennis shoe? Think about that for a second. No Googling, no asking Siri. The answer to that question was pretty astonishing. I had no idea that this was the answer. But you can actually tie a shoelace 2 billion different ways. And I'm like, whoa, what? Is that even true? I don't know. Maybe somebody made a mistake when they posted that. But I think it's true. Think about that. If you were to tell a child to tie their shoelaces for the first time and the only time, that would be silly, right? I mean, obviously, children take some time to learn how to tie their shoes, and they make mistakes along the way, and they continue to make mistakes until they eventually get it just right. So yes, 2 trillion ways to tie your tennis shoe laces. I would even say that it would be 8 billion different ways because there's 8 billion people in the world, and I'm sure they do it all a different way. Who knows? So I want to talk about, why is it that we don't like admitting to mistakes? Well, I think for the most part, the main 2 reasons are: 1, we don't want to be wrong, and 2, we certainly don't want to look stupid, right? We spend our whole lives trying to be smart. We go to school, we go to college, we do all these things, we work and we learn, and nobody wants to look stupid. But I'll tell you my story. So my story was, I'm around 8 years old in California, and I walked down to the grocery store. I'm not even sure what the name of it was, but I'm like this big girl going to the grocery store, and I realized I didn't have any money. So I thought it would be wise to sneak and put a Snicker bar in my pants and that nobody would notice. And as I was walking out the door to the doors open at the grocery store, when you walk, all of a sudden this candy bar falls out. It had fallen out of my pants. Britches is what my mom would call them. And I'm standing right there, and there's a gentleman who's coming in the door, and he basically says, young lady, you'll come with me. And I'm like, at first I was like, it's not mine. It's not mine. Well, I don't know who else's candy bar that could have been, but he did the whole thing. He took me back to the back room in front of all the customers. I had to the walk of shame. He was holding the candy bar. It was a Snickers bar, which was my favorite candy bar, still is to this day. And he sits me back there and he calls my mom. And I'll tell you, I think that was harder for me to deal with, was the fact that him calling my mom, because I knew I was in trouble and I had made a huge mistake, because she had taught us that stealing is not the way to go. So I will tell you, though, I never stole again. And that was a huge lesson I learned. I'm grateful I got caught early on, because I absolutely never wanted to go through that again. That embarrassment was way too big. So I had asked a gentleman here, I'd asked John today what he thought about what's the reason why people don't admit to mistakes. And he said, well, I think it's because you feel weak. And I'm like, wow, that's an interesting, different perspective. I guess You could feel weak, yes, because you think, I think that's kind of in alignment of, though, not wanting to feel stupid, right? Because we want to have the right answers. And when it comes to mortality, people, please know that you're not always going to have the right answer. I promise you, some of the things that are going to happen by owning up to mistakes and being okay with them, and then also having the conversation of mortality, it's going to take some practice and it's going to take some time. Because I promise you, a couple things are going to happen in the beginning. One is you're not going to know how to do it. You're going to think that it's wrong because the world says don't have this discussion. The other thing that could happen is you may hurt somebody's feelings. You may even hurt somebody's feelings that you love because, we don't have all the answers. And the point I want to make here is that you have to remember too that the person who had the loss and the person who hasn't had the loss are the two who aren't talking. Because most times when a person has had a loss, they're kind of now in what we call, they kind of are singled out in a group. Like if you've lost a child, you're in a group with people who have lost a child. If you've lost your sibling, you're kind of going to gear towards talking with people more that you lost your sibling. They have lost their sibling. Well, the truth is we just need to get the open communication with everybody. And it's not always going to come out right the first or maybe the second time, or maybe even the 100th time. But with practice, we will perfect it. There are many mistakes that the world has paid some very big prices for. I think that stocks are a very big a great example of how you can really pay a big price by not investing into the right stock. Also, there was a faulty in the 1977 Ford, or the Pinto. Okay, so the Ford Pinto. Some of you remember that vehicle. I was still fairly young, so they had a issue with the fuel tank, and the company figured, well, we'll just deal with the aftermath of some small claims if they come about, rather than fixing the problem ahead of time. Come find out that that was a very, very large settlement. Millions and millions of dollars were paid out because of the faulty fuel tank. Now, Ford has survived, though. They obviously learned the hard way. And now what they're doing is producing even more great vehicles, more safe vehicles. So in this case, the 1977 faulty Pinto turned out to be a good lesson learned, and is now, they are producing even more and better quality vehicles. Let's talk about medication. Let's talk about, again, these hard things, these hard conversations. There's a lot of people who've wrongly taken the wrong medication. It's caused some reactions. Some have survived, some have not. Furniture. We'll talk more about baby furniture. I know that there has been a lot of cases where furniture was built in good intention, but unfortunately, there was a death that occurred and they had lawsuits, and rightfully so. Those pieces had to be replaced or improved. I think that mistakes are going to happen. And I think that mistakes are something that we can continue to make in the way that it doesn't harm anyone, hurt anyone, or kill anyone. Because the mistakes that have been in our past history, where again, I'm talking about everything here today, because when it comes to mistakes, I know that I'm going to make them. I know that other people are going to make them. I want people to understand that they're going to make them in a good way, and not feel any less than of a person when they've made them, to be able to correct them. Let's talk about past history. So past history, we've had a lot of lives that were taken for many things in history. I'm just going to touch on one today. Just one, because it has always kind of haunted me. It's Hitler. Hitler was a strong leader. He got a lot of people to follow him. I don't know how they followed in that type of leadership, but again, that's way before my time, so I don't have the authority to speak on that. But I'll speak on the part of Hitler was able to influence a lot of people and took a lot of people's lives. And Hitler is somebody that if I had the opportunity to sit in front of today, I'd have some very interesting questions to ask him as far as his own prearrangements. So I hope you're following me on this. I would love to sit with people who have no idea of the mortality conversation, but are out there doing very serious mistakes. And they are the people I want to sit with and have a deep discussion about their own mortality and what do they want their end of life to look like? What do they want their family to show up at the funeral home, to experience? I promise you, if I had a chance to sit with someone like Hitler, maybe some of this would not have happened. I don't know. I can't go back in history, but I can go forward in the future. And I do believe that the people who have no value for a person's life have had permission to take it. And this is why we're changing this. With your help, we're going to change this. And I don't care how many times or how many mistakes we have to make to do it. But I'm saying if we normalize the conversation of mortality, things like that are lessened to happen than the way that they did many years ago, because they had no idea what they were walking into. They trusted this person, and this person wasn't trustworthy. And I think that there's still things like that going on in this world today that we've got to take a look at and we've got to take a stand for and be okay with making the mistake of even bringing it up in discussion. Some people are going to shoot you down, but I say rise up and just say, look, something doesn't feel right here. This isn't working out. This doesn't make sense. I mean, I was thinking about my allergy pill today, and I'm like, wait a minute. I've been taking all kinds of allergy pills, but they're only getting worse. I'm kind of going to question that now. I'm going, hey, that doesn't make any sense. So what is it that we can be okay with in making a mistake when it's going to make a difference? Because without them, we cannot change anything. No one's going to learn. I got a question. Yay. Because it's getting a little heated on me. I'm getting a little bit like bringing up the fact of even bringing up Hitler's name. I don't like to do it because I don't like I don't like promoting anybody who, but at the same time, the mortality conversation makes me think about every life, not just my life, but everybody's life. He had a life too. This is just what he made a choice to live it the way he decided to live it. Yes, John.
Talking about mistakes. There are different kinds of mistakes.
Yes.
There's mistakes because you're ignorant of a situation. You don't know, that you're doing something and you do it wrong. Whether it's tying your shoe, you tie your shoe wrong or something like that. And I did verify there are over 2 trillion ways to tie your shoe.
2 trillion ways. Yeah. Okay, John, he's my backup. He's got my back.
And then there are mistakes that you make because they're not really mistakes, they're bad choices.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure it does. Absolutely.
Okay. It's like well, I chose to do this. That was a mistake.
That didn't work. I think I'll try something different.
So that we class that as a mistake.
Yeah.
So and anyway, but yeah, I think that I agree with you, and I like what you're saying about if we could learn to admit our mistakes, face up to them, we actually become stronger because of it, I think. So.
No, John, you do become stronger. I didn't grab a hold of a better character until that candy bar fell on the ground and I was caught. Do you know what I mean? So it is, I think when a person even just admitting that they made a mistake makes them a stronger person. It makes them feel like they are a valuable person. It builds confidence when you own up to a mistake. And no, they're not going to be fun to admit. They're not. But in the long run, I think that they are. I think that they will add value to our own life and also to the life of other people. I think, it kind of brings me up to a time when there was Ella was preemie back in '06, and unfortunately, just a couple beds down from her, there was a family that had a child, and this is public news, so I can share it. It was public news, and my heart goes out to that family still to this day. But the baby was given some wrong medication, and of course, there was a court hearing, and there was lawsuits, and as rightfully so, like we have to learn sometimes very a difficult way, right? Financial way when we make mistakes. However, what had happened in that courtroom was astonishing, and that was the person who had given the wrong medication, the nurse, had got up and was pouring her soul out on how sorry she was. And the mother of this child stood up and gave her a hug and said, "I understand. Mistakes happen." Now, the lawsuit still needed to happen, of course, but I'll never forget how it felt watching somebody admit to their mistake and then another person actually immediately giving them forgiveness. There wasn't a pin drop in the room of that courtroom that day. And I think a lot of people who were watching obviously would have seen something, so different. So I don't know about you, but if you're willing to be brave and put in the chat box a question, it could be any question, mortality, it could be a question about admitting mistakes and why it's difficult for you. I always want people to participate in my conversations. It does make it a little easier for all of us. And I think it's important, that we just converse together because we are all in this conversation together in life and in loss. And we're going to take a quick break so I can catch my breath, get a little bit of water. I am experiencing a little bit allergies. Sympathy out there for all you other people who are experiencing it. Hang in there. We're going to get through it. We'll have another month next month where it kind of dies down a little bit and we feel better. So see you right back after the commercial. Welcome back to the Permission Mission Show. My name is Mary McElhatton. I am your host today, broadcasting live in Las Vegas, Nevada. We broadcast live every Friday at 11 a.m. I am today talking about admitting mistakes and why it's so difficult to admit to them. I have a question here in the studio. Yes.
Sorry, it's for me again.
Yes, no, I love it, John. Thank you.
Before the show, we were talking about admitting your mistakes and a couple of, you used a couple of examples of what might happen. I think, or I feel that by admitting our mistakes helps us grow as people, rather than if we keep ignoring our mistakes and not admitting or standing up and taking, whatever comes because of it, it kind of pushes us down farther and farther into negative spaces where by every time you make a mistake and you admit it and you say, okay, what do we do? I mean, I'll use an example in my own life.
Yes. What's that example?
And this has to deal with, I've been in construction my entire life, in construction management. And on the jobs, I always had a policy of, with the subcontractors, electricians, plumbers, anybody, if you make a mistake, if you screw something up, come and let me know immediately, and we will be able to take care of it. If you make a mistake and you don't tell me about it, and I find out about it, then you're going to pay. But you don't have to pay. It's like, okay, I just drove a nail through a copper pipe here. Okay, let's go get the plumber. We'll fix it right now. Bang, it's done. And, in 10, 15 minutes, everything's back to normal. But if they just keep going, don't say anything, oh, well, never mind. Then you've got it covered up with drywall. You turn the water on. You got leaks all over the place. And it's a nightmare. And I think that's the same. That's what happens to us as individuals.
Yeah, we can fix a problem immediately by owning up to the mistake versus a lifetime of suffering and pain. Because I heard a great saying many years ago is, wherever you go, there you are. Like wherever you go, you're not going to outrun yourself, right? We have the ability to make changes when we just admit to them. And I do think it does build a sense of confidence and a sense of empowerment, like you are a stronger person because you owned up to the mistake, and immediately, so that it could be, if there's a chance to have it fixed, there's a chance to have it fixed. So yes,
I have another example, and I read this years
I'm going to
ago.
have John on the show one of these days. He's my anchor here. He's my anchor man.
The 3M company. Okay, you're familiar with them?
3M company, no.
Okay, so they were a big chemical company. They made all kinds of stuff. They were huge
Okay.
corporation. Post-it notes came from the 3M company.
Okay.
Because of a mistake. Now, they used to have a huge celebration every year for the best idea in their company for that year, from research and development. And they would have this big party, and they would shoot off cannons, and, they would get little trophies and stuff like that. And they also had an award for the biggest mistake.
I love it.
Of the
I love
year.
it.
Because they said that they wanted their people to keep trying and try different things and keep progressing and not be afraid of what was going to happen if they made a mistake or screwed something up. And so I thought that was a great way for a company, and I'm sure it's not like that anymore, but
well, Zappos kind of did that a little bit,
yes,
where they had awards for all the different creative ways.
Yep.
And a good environment, happy environment. And yes, I mean, mistakes were welcomed. And I think in any workplace, if we have that kind of, if we have permission to have open discussions and not that we're not going to get reprimanded or, written up or whatever, but I'd certainly rather have it right off the bat than keep it making worse outcomes, making worse results.
If you have that kind of an environment where your people from a business point of view,
yeah,
if your employees are afraid to do something or make a decision because they're afraid of making a mistake or making the wrong decision, you are hurting your business. And if you have an environment where they're not afraid to do something, they're not afraid to, okay, well, if I make a mistake, I'm not going to lose my job. You know, I may
Yeah.
make it a little slap on the wrist and say, don't do that again. But then I feel comfortable in, you know, trying to do better or coming up with better ideas or something like that.
Yeah. Well, they kind of, when we were children, and you got, back in the day when I was a child, I did get smacked on the hand. I did get smacked on the butt because if it was going to hurt me, obviously my parents were teaching me that that wasn't a good idea. I think as we grow older, it kind of feels the same way, like when someone attempts to say, look, I think this is done incorrectly, or I think you made a mistake, or it kind of brings us back to that little kid, like, I don't want to do it wrong and I don't want to get in trouble. And, you know, it's different for everybody because everybody was raised differently. But the bottom line is, it's either you don't want to be wrong or you don't want to look stupid. And for me, it's more of, I don't want to do it wrong because I like to make sure that I'm doing things the right way. But hey, I invite mistakes as long as they're good and healthy ones. And I want people to understand, you might be sitting in a mistake right now that you've made. And if there's a nugget out of today is that they're going to happen. And if you're bold and brave and proud enough to say that you made the mistake to the people you made the mistake to, I really think that you're going to benefit from it in a healthy way. I think that your life can extend because of it. And also somebody else's life can extend of it. Because that's what this show is all about. It's about ways of rising up and standing up for discussions that we can have that are uncomfortable. Admitting mistakes is a very uncomfortable situation that we would be in, and we don't want to have it. It's just the same with mortality. We don't want to have it, but we know if we get caught, we're going to have it. But some people literally do take their mistakes to the grave. We know this just based on results. We know this. And why? When you can just say, look, I really screwed up. Especially if it's not a bad one that didn't harm somebody. It's like, I get it. But, it's also important for us to have this mortality conversation and get over the fears of it and feel like we are empowered by it versus dumbed down to it, like not paying attention to things that could be harming or hurting us. And yeah, John, you had said, like sometimes we just keep doing things to ourselves that hurt us. Like we don't get the lesson. I get it. We don't get the lesson because we're not putting skin on the game, which is if you do not do this again, your life is at stake. That's what I hope you hear is if you're hurting yourself or you're doing something to yourself, you're making a mistake, reach out for help, ask somebody, call me, reach out to me on my website, because I don't want anybody to just sit there by themselves and alone in this silent conversation that doesn't do anybody good. So, did you have a question again, John? I'm doing my best to stay on track here.
No.
We're good.
It's I just had a thought about how the topic today about mistakes and about mortality is that by having that conversation about mortality, by not having the conversation, that's the mistake.
By not having the conversation,
right?
Correct.
Because if you start that conversation and you open it up so that you can discuss it freely or normalize discussing it, your life is going to be better. The life of the people around you. You're taking the stress off. You're never going to take away the loss,
right?
But you can take away all the other stressful situations around that loss, so that you can focus on your grief, focus on what's happening, and not have to worry about, oh my God, what do I do now?
Sure.
What's next? Where do I go? How do I and which could create even more mistakes for you. So
it certainly does.
Yeah.
not having any type of plans for final arrangements can really create some big mistakes for people later on. They question whether they did the right thing. Sometimes they overspend and they're angry about that. So there's a lot of things that we, by not doing this, will pay bigger prices. By
Right.
not having the conversations up front, bigger prices are paid. Current mistakes, I've always said, I had this on another show too. I love this thing. This thing is my best friend. I can ask Siri anything at any given time. I can Google anything. I can look at pictures from 5 years ago to current. I can text people in a second and get a hold of them. I can make a call from here to Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, to talk with my sister every morning, or text a daughter who needs to be picked up from school. I love this thing. But the mistake is not understanding how dangerous this thing is. It's dangerous. That is a current mistake today on how distractions and disconnections are hurting our lives more than they are helping. I don't want to see the phone go away. I just want to figure out how we as people don't allow this thing to be as harmful as it is. And that's the open discussions in here that we're going to learn as we go. What are some ways that we can stay connected? What are some ways that we can take an item such as this, or a phone, and say, look, I really enjoy all your benefits, but I also understand the repercussions, that if I don't know what it's capable of doing and how it can take a life in a moment by being on it while we're driving or texting, we're missing the other component to it. And that's like life and death. There's two components to it, and they both play a very, very valuable role. And in the middle are all the mistakes that we can learn from, so that in our future mistakes, we have a little bit more of an understanding to make some different decisions, to take our time on getting to the place that we ended up being late to show up to. Maybe set the alarm a little bit earlier. I know these are silly. I feel like a mom saying them to you, but at the same time, I am a mom, and I want my kids out there safe as much as I want your kids to be out there safe. So permission mission is bringing great different topic discussions that are uncomfortable, so that we can have them, so we can learn from them, so we can grow from them, so our lives have better quality, and also even our death has better quality. Because earlier I was on a show, and it's a discussion that so many people don't want to have. When they lose somebody, they're scrambling, there's uncertainty, there's devastation, there's guilt, there's all these things that we can do a better job up front to help those people who have passed on, and the families who are dealing with the death of their loved ones. Just a little bit different approach, and that is to be outwardly speaking up about it, not to shy it away, not to make it a bad thing, but to make it a thing that's okay for all of us, since we're all in it together. And there's no right way and there's no wrong way. There's just this way. And the way is to keep identifying with things that mean something that we still don't know the meaning of yet. We think we do. Shoot, I'm getting ready to come up on my 40th class reunion. And just when I think I know something, I'm very well reminded that I know nothing at all, based on my 10-year-old at home. I know nothing, okay? I don't know how to work the phone right, and I don't cook the dinner quick enough, and all those fun things. So we're going to close it up pretty early today. I'm excited about next week's show. Next week's show, we're actually going to have family discussions and how to bring it up with your immediate family and getting better practice at the, saying, look, like if I pass away, these are my wishes. If something happens to you, what are your wishes? How can we better keep this discussion open in families that matter the most to us? Because at the end of the day, if you had a choice after you've passed to come back and say, I wish I would have had it, the answer is most likely going to be yes, I wish I had had it with them. Because whether you can see us or not, I wonder if my brothers can see me or not having this talk today and honoring them with a permission mission part of it. I wonder if they're looking down on me going, great job, Mary, but hey, I'm okay. Or they're saying, wait a minute, Mary, you're making a mistake, but I wouldn't come back and say anything different. I don't know. These are the questions we'll never know, but they're great questions to keep asking. So next week we'll be with family and opening up the conversation of mortality. The following week is going to be on veterans. I'm going to honor veterans. We're going to discuss how important it is for veterans to know what their benefits are, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. I don't want any family, let alone any of our veteran families, missing out on opportunities to make sure that their benefits are in place ahead of time and they can be honored for why they served our country. I'll leave you with this note here. I said, children, a child will remember what you did, not what you said. So they'll remember what we do. Keep tying those shoelaces time and time again. Try the different ways. I'm sure that you could Google that on the different 2 trillion ways to do it. Again, do something a little different. Have some fun with it this week. I appreciate you tuning into the Permission Mission Live broadcasting show here in Las Vegas every Friday at 11 a.m. You're welcome to go to my email, connect with me directly just by going to permissionmission.com. Click the link, contact Mary, and I'll be more than happy to follow up with you. Because if you're having questions about what prearrangements are, reach out to me. I want to help you with that. It's very simple. People are very excited once they have the discussion opened up, and then they're able to make a true choice of what their wishes are to be carried out for hopefully long from now. Like me, I don't want to go anytime soon, but if I did, I'm all ready and prepared to, and so is my family. Have a great week, everyone. I'll see you.